If I want to own a horse, where do I begin?
I would tell you the best place to start is by finding a local riding stable near you. Buying a horse first thing, not like buying a cat first thing.
Okay.
And finding a knowledgeable person to help bring you into the world of horses is totally the way to go. So after you've taken some lessons for a while, learned about horses, I generally recommend that people do that for a year, maybe two, and then look at, okay, let me go out and look for a first horse. And for that, I always recommend that they have a professional involved. You don't want to go find that horse on your own.
Oh, wow.
There's certainly success stories of doing it. That's rare. It's not the norm.
Welcome to Care Experts, a podcast dedicated to empowering you with knowledge for your health and self-care. I'm Melissa, a broadcast journalist.
And I'm Selah, a former fitness coach and personal trainer.
Each week, we interview top wellness and medical specialists from across the country, addressing your questions, even those you might be afraid to ask.
From your fur baby's well-being to skincare secrets to honest talk about bigger health issues, get it straight from the expert.
Join us every Wednesday for insights that will guide you on your health journey.
From cosmetic to dental and vet to vision, this is Care Experts. Hello, Melissa.
Hey, Selah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well, doing really well.
About
Today,
that.
we actually are talking to two people. We're talking to Dr. Erica Lacher, who graduated from the University of Florida College of Veterinary Medicine in 2001. And she owns a practice at Spring Hill Equine Veterinary Clinic in North Central Florida.
That's right. And what's so cool is she works alongside her husband, who we're also interviewing.
Oh, that's right. He's going to be here too.
Justin B. Long. She co-hosts the podcast Straight from the Horse Doctor's Mouth. I love that.
I love that title.
Which is the largest equine podcast in the world. And together they wrote the book, How to Become an Equine Veterinarian.
So here's what I love. Justin B. Long, her husband, is an author. He's a business owner and the host of the podcast, just as you just said, Straight from the Horse Doctor's Mouth, which he co-produces with his wife, Dr. Erica Lacher. And his best-selling book series, The Adventures of the Horse Doctor's Husband, has been enjoyed by readers all over the world.
I mean, it makes sense. That's a great title.
It really is.
Great
It
title.
really is.
Come
Let's
on.
bring them in
Let's
here.
do it.
Dr. Erica Lacher and Justin Long.
Yes. Hey, hello.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome.
Hi.
Yes, welcome. We are so excited to have you both on today. Husband and wife, this is a first for us.
This is a first for us.
Yes, we have not interviewed a husband and wife
So welcome
yet.
to Care Experts is what we're saying,
Yes.
Dr. Erica
Thank you for
Lacher
having
and
us.
your husband, Justin B. Long. I want to include that B.
Yes.
What does the B stand for?
V stands for void.
Oh,
It's
nice.
a mark of excellence.
Okay.
We're talking about horses today, which you know a lot about.
Yes.
We do.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Lacher, what made you want to study veterinary medicine?
Well, when I was around 5 years old, I went through that I wanted to be a firefighter.
Oh.
That was a brief phase.
Okay.
And then I thought about being a veterinarian. And I really loved horses, even at that age. And so I was like, equine veterinarian it is. And here I am.
So, Dr. Lacher, you rode horses growing up? Do you still ride?
I do, yeah. We live in a very tiny apartment on top of a very large barn
Wow.
where my horses live. And so I'm pretty committed to riding most days of the week. If I don't have my riding time, nobody wants to be around me.
Oh, wow.
Keeps my mental sanity.
It's such a good
Is that-
workout too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a full body workout for sure.
Justin, is that true? You don't want to be around her if she hasn't ridden her horse?
It's very true.
Why?
If I don't go to the gym, you don't want to be around me. If she doesn't ride her horse, you don't want to be around her.
What does it do for you, riding horses?
Well, it sort of shuts off my brain. Like you have to be so in tune with what's going on. I have a million things I have to think about. They're very reactive to you. And so your emotions, everything you're doing, they pick up on and amplify.
Oh, wow.
So if I want them to do what I'm asking, I have to be really in the moment doing that thing. And so it helps me sort of shut my brain off, get away from everything else.
It's very meditative.
In a way, yeah.
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 I've heard that horses there's horse therapy, right? Okay.
And I think part of it is, they're this huge animal, but they so feed off of you. Wow. And so if you're willing to be calm around them, they'll give you that back times 100.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
In preparation for this episode, I read that there is a shortage of equine veterinarians. Why is that?
What? Yeah.
There's a massive shortage of equine veterinarians, and there's a few reasons. One is The vet school debt to income ratio is not great.
Oh.
And it's the worst for equine veterinarians.
Oof.
We also have significant on-call duties, and that can be very difficult to manage life around.
That's
And then you
right.
add that more people who are coming into vet school are from urban areas and they don't have a horse background. And being around horses, you know, there's sort of low level being around horses, and then there's working with them every day and understanding them. And that's a very acquired skill that just takes time to learn about horses and how they react to the world. They're a prey species, so they react very, very differently than we do. We're a predator species, sort of, right? If you consider the grocery store. Right.
Yeah.
And so horses react to things very differently. You know, we talk about them kind of spooking at random stuff. And it's that for them, that's how they survive. So understanding the behavior of horses is it's a lengthy process to really get there. And if you don't grow up around them, that's hard to do. Then you add all the other stressors too, and it's difficult.
Definitely.
Sounds really challenging and demanding.
Yeah.
It's much more of a lifestyle than a job.
I was going to say, you must be in demand, though, all the time. Do you have...
I think Justin would agree that I'm in demand all the time.
off the hook all the
Yeah.
time. Wow.
I think part of the challenge with the structure of most equine veterinary businesses is that they're a one doctor practice. And so you're always on call, always available to your clients and your patients to do the things. And until you can get into a multi-doctor practice like we've built, then you can start getting some time off and not be on call all day, every day forever.
So let's say I am brand new to horses and I'm like, you know what? I am going to open up a farm and I want to start by buying my first horse.
Yeah.
If I want to own a horse, where do I begin?
I would tell you the best place to start is by finding a local riding stable near you. Buying a horse first thing, not like buying a cat first thing.
Okay.
And finding a knowledgeable person to help bring you into the world of horses is totally the way to go. You know, so after you've taken some lessons for a while, learned about horses, I generally recommend that people do that for a year, maybe two, and then look at, okay, let me go out and look for a first horse. And for that, I always recommend that they have a professional involved. You don't want to go find that horse on your own.
Oh, wow.
There's certainly success stories of doing it. That's rare.
That's not
it's
the
not the
norm.
norm.
Well, I've heard a friend of mine I want to say she was leasing or sharing a horse with someone. Is that something like they were splitting the cost of the
Oh,
horse?
I never heard of that.
It's a very common way to start into it.
Okay.
You know, a lot of the riding stables, a couple of trainers that we work with, they own horses. And so let's say you're ready to maybe get into it a little bit more, stick your toe in the shallow end of the pool. You can lease a horse from them where you don't necessarily have that lifetime of responsibility. You can try it out.
Right. Yeah.
What are some of the costs associated with horse ownership?
Whew.
Oh, a lot.
Justin?
Often it's like your kid wants to get into it, right? Your daughter's 7 or 8, she wants to get into a pony. And so if you're really starting from scratch, like buying the horse seems like the expensive thing because you can spend $30,000 to $50,000 on a horse easy. Or you can spend $500 or $5 million. Like it's a big spectrum.
Wow.
But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Like you have to feed that horse every day. Horses eat a lot of food and a lot of hay. Horses eat a lot of grass if you have it available, but if you don't have space, and a lot of people don't have 20 acres for a horse to be on, you have to feed that horse hay, which adds up. Depending on where you are in the country, you can pay a lot of shipping. So,
Hey, I never thought about that.
yeah.
Because there's not just hay available everywhere.
It's
Right.
not,
Yeah,
right?
can't go to the grocery
Like
store.
it can go up to $5 million for one horse?
Absolutely.
I mean, that must be like a racing horse or
Right.
something.
Derby
that's going-
horse.
I was going to
Yep.
say, like going to
Yeah.
Kentucky Derby
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something,
Yeah, all the
right?
horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby are probably in that price range.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
The Olympic horses.
Okay.
we want to avoid that end of the spectrum if at all
Yeah.
possible. But it's just, but you have veterinary care on top of that because horses need vaccines. They need dental care. They have a lot of injuries because horses are accident prone. But you also need farrier care, which is taking care of their feet. And that's something that happens every 4 to 6 weeks because they grow hooves just like we grow fingernails.
Oh.
If you're going to take that horse anywhere and do anything with it, you've got to be able to transport it. So you've got to buy a truck, you've got to buy a trailer. You can run into so much money with this stuff. And if you're going to have it stable at someone else's house because you don't have the space, then you're paying board for that horse to live at someone else's place. And you still have all of those other expenses on top of that.
So something that I've always been fascinated by when it comes to horses is just how strong
Mm-hmm.
they look from afar, and then close up, you're like, wow, you are majestic and you are so powerful,
And
right?
so delicate.
But yeah, how it's like there's like a weird balance between the two.
Well, horses are made to run from predators quickly. And they were made to live in the wild for about 8 to 10 years and not do what we do with them. So all of the things that we do, they weren't necessarily designed for. They also, I always say I wasn't consulted in the design phase, but I would have done it differently. So they basically walk on a fingertip. So like if you take your finger and you're walking on your fingertip, that's what they do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that why they're so accident prone?
Yes. And they're just sort of
Oh.
accident prone individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, they look at everything like, how could I hurt myself on that?
So what do you think about then the equestrian, like what we do with horses as far as equestrian life and racing them and all that? Do you agree with that? I know, is that controversial?
Some parts of it are.
Okay.
We've certainly, we have a lot of welfare things that we pay attention to with horses. We try to pay attention to their needs even more, like it's ever evolving, the way that we do that. One of the big things that we just talked about in terms of cost with hay, horses should be on a hay predominant diet or forage of some sort. So grass, hay, those kinds of things. So we really try to pay attention more and more in their environments as to how can we get them more of that? How can we get them more outside time, even if it's just walking around? What can we do to keep their environment as natural as possible? And that minimizes some of that. Also, our training methods, we want to make sure that that horse doesn't go from being in a stall to going to the racetrack. We're going to do training on it, just like a human athlete. You can't take me from this couch to a marathon. I won't survive. I won't survive a 5K, let's be honest. But, so we need to train them up to
Yes.
what we're asking them to do. And that process trains the bones, the tendons, the ligaments, the muscles to be prepared for what we're asking. And then that veterinarian farrier relationship becomes really important. That's super important for the whole process as well.
What's the best way for someone to afford horse riding or horse?
Timeshare horses.
Okay. So like we were talking
Yeah,
about.
walking into a leasing situation ends up being really great. And again, having professionals along with you. I always, I tell my clients the cheapest part of this is going to be buying a horse. So finding the one that is the right horse with a professional to help you do that. Listening to the professionals around you when they say leasing a horse is your best option at the moment, it probably is, right? Like don't question them. And there's certainly, like I was into this until I was in my early 20s in a very, very low level way. Like you say bombed around the backyard on a pony, and it was fantastic. And it was, we had the day-to-day costs of the horse, but we didn't have a lot of other costs in her. But we had a professional who helped us find a horse that was super safe for me to, climb up bareback, climb under,
Your
over,
own
around.
pony?
Yeah.
You were talking about finding the right horse. So when you say that, I'm thinking, so obviously horses have different personalities, but how can you tell if a horse and you are the right fit? They
Well,
can't
in
talk
some
to you.
ways, yeah. In some ways, it's your skill level. And
Okay.
again, that's where a professional is really important. It's a little bit like car shopping.
Oh.
Lots of us start with a Honda Civic. It's a great car. It's not very exciting, but it does get you from point A to point B. It's got good gas mileage.
Yeah.
It's got all the things, right?
Safety features?
Yeah. Most of us
Does
do
the job.
not need an F1 race car.
No, most of
Right.
us
It'd be
don't.
fun to
no.
have, but, driving that on a day-to-day basis wouldn't be ideal. So, it's having that professional who helps you decide, do you need a Honda Civic? Or you may be ready for a Mercedes or a Lexus? Probably not an F1 car. So it's that person who can help you find what's the right fit for you. And again, that's where I see people time after time kind of say, I can do this on my own. And I really don't recommend it.
I've heard of people selling, like, what's the resale thing about? Or when people sell their horse, there's quite a bit of business in there too, isn't there?
There is, and as the horses go up higher, you can imagine it's just like home sales.
Wow.
Things change significantly.
Value.
The value, the people involved, all of that. One of the big things, though, about buying and selling horses from a veterinary perspective is that we always recommend that there's a veterinarian involved before the final purchase is done. And that's to make sure that there isn't anything hidden. Just like, I don't know about you guys, but I can't walk up to that Honda Civic and know that the engine doesn't work. I'm going to need a mechanic for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's where we come in to say, okay, everything may look good, but let us do a once over and make sure that everything is good on the inside.
So let's talk about veterinary visits. What does that entail? Like a typical horse veterinary session, I guess, if you will?
Well, for us, we recommend for most horses that twice a year they have a visit from the veterinarian. If you've been in the dog and cat world, they get vaccines much less frequently than horses.
Oh.
But horses, being horses, are not very good at responding to vaccines.
Oh no.
Yes.
Like they spook or it just doesn't work.
The immune system doesn't remember.
Oh,
The way
okay.
vaccines work is you get a vaccine for us to tell the immune system, hey,
This
be
is
ready.
what you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get ready.
If you see
in
this
the,
guy-
in the event of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a bad guy. We're letting you know this is what they look like. Be ready.
Yeah.
Well, horses forget.
Huh.
Yeah, so in about 6 to 8 months, most horses will forget what they were supposed to be looking for.
Wow.
And so we recommend that most horses have vaccines every 6 to 8 months. In our area, so we're in the Florida area, we have mosquitoes all year round.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
Fun. Isn't
Yeah,
that fun?
it's our state bird.
Ugh, the worst.
And those mosquitoes carry diseases that
Oh,
horses
man.
are really susceptible to. If horses are showing and they're seeing other horses, again, we have to vaccinate them frequently for those upper respiratory diseases. So about twice a year, we go out, we do a once over. We make sure eyes, mouth, heart, all of those things are doing what they should. The feet look good, legs look good. We just do sort of a brief physical exam, kind of like when you go to the doctor and they tell you to take a deep breath. Look left and right. Let me look
Yeah.
in your throat, all those sorts of things. We do just a brief physical. And then based on your horse's lifestyle, we're going to choose which vaccines we give to your horse at that point.
Wow.
We may do a blood test called a Coggins. Horses are required to have that to go to horse shows. And so if the horse is traveling or going to any gatherings of horses, it's a blood test they need to have. So we'll do that. And we'll probably check for intestinal parasites as well.
What are some of the typical vaccines that you administer for horses? Maybe it is regional?
Every horse in most of the world should get what we call Eastern and Western encephalitis, tetanus. Tetanus is the same as in people. And West Nile. So the encephalitises in West Nile are carried by mosquitoes. In a lot of the world, those viruses are around. It doesn't matter if your horse doesn't even leave their property.
Wow.
Yeah. And then rabies
Oh.
are the basics that every horse should get no matter what.
And you'll repeat those every 6 months or
Yep,
no?
every 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then if they go to other places, they see other horses a lot, we'll recommend that we add in the respiratory viruses, which are rhinopneumonitis and influenza. And depending on their lifestyle, again, we may add something called strangles, which sounds horrible.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit.
Strangling. Great.
It's not as bad as it sounds, but
Okay.
yes, we'll add strangles vaccine in there as well.
Wow.
And then
What-
there's some regional vaccines.
What are some common health concerns when it comes to horses?
Where do I start?
Where do I begin?
Their GI tract is a disaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I always say that no plumber would design a system like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So they're designed to eat poor quality forage all the time. We then bring them into an environment where we don't necessarily do that with them. We feed them higher quality forage. We don't necessarily have them out on large pieces of property moving all the time, some of that kind of stuff. So we just have to be aware that we've done that and manage it. But one of the number one things that we see in horses is something called colic.
Oh,
And
yeah. I've heard of horse colic.
Kind of like
Yeah.
kids. Horses are sort of the opposite. They tend to do it more once they're adults as opposed to when they're babies.
Oh.
But it usually has to do with a blockage somewhere and the GI tract also taking some crazy turn. So they have a spot where it goes from bigger to smaller and turns 180 degrees. Like no plumber would tell you that was a
Right,
good idea.
that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, it is similar to babies with colic, the gas blockage and the constipation. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
So what do you do to alleviate
Yeah.
that after you find it?
For
Yeah.
most of them, we go out and rehydrate them. It's a
Okay.
hydration problem. You guys have probably heard you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make
Yes.
it drink. Truer words were never spoken.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
cannot make it drink.
You cannot make a horse drink. But so a lot of what we're doing is rehydrating them, managing the pain component of it, doing some of these kinds of things for the low level ones. When you go up a little bit, there are definitely some surgical problems that happen with the equine GI tract. Again, it's the number one problem we have with them. It's also the number one killer of regular aged horse, not from old age, but younger horses. And so colic surgery is something that happens on a fairly regular basis. Most horses will go their whole life without having it, but
Wow.
we probably because I'm a veterinarian, we have a improper ratio of that. I think on our property we have
Too many.
we've had 4 colic surgeries.
Oh, wow.
You perform the surgery?
I did in my internship, but I don't now. Now I let
Okay.
the surgeons do that.
Wow.
So we have what we call a referral facility where we'll see the horse and we'll say, "Whoa, this is beyond us. But your horse needs surgery." The sooner we get them to surgery, the better they do. And horses actually do really well
Okay.
with that surgery. Lots of people are very worried about putting them under anesthesia. I mean, they're a big animal to do all that
Yeah.
with, but they handle it really, really well. And it just has to do with, again, the design phase of that GI tract. It's not attached kind of the way it should, so it can migrate around places that it should never be able to migrate. It can do some things it just, like I said, it should not be able to do. And then if they don't drink, and they get a little bit of that constipation, they get a little
Yeah.
gas behind it, and off we go.
You mentioned how important taking care of their hooves is. Tell us more about that and why.
Well, in the horse world, there's a saying, no hoof, no horse. We like sayings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true. And part of it is that if you think about the fact that these horses are walking on a fingertip, you have this giant animal walking on 4 tiny fingertips. It's really important that that fingertip is being walked upon properly. And they don't always grow the hoof the way it should. Again, we don't have them out walking hundreds of miles. We don't have them on rocky terrain necessarily. We have all these things that we've done to them that pull them out of their natural environment. And so we need to make sure that those feet are taken care of. Feet are also they're a physics problem. I always tell the vet students, this is why you had to take physics, is so that you can understand feet. And so we need to keep all of the levers and pulleys in there adjusted properly so that we're not creating issues somewhere. And so I would say that foot care is probably one of the most important things that a horse gets on a month-by-month basis.
What does that look like? What does it entail exactly?
So we usually bring in what we call the farrier, and that's someone who works on horse feet.
Okay.
They'll pick up the foot and they'll evaluate how it's balanced. So we have certain markers that show us sort of how the foot should be trimmed. So if you think about, like when you go get like a manicure. So we're thinking, the style right now with the long pointy nail, we do not want that.
Oh.
Think short nails.
Okay.
Short nails.
Okay.
Nice.
Like mine. I like them short. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's because if you think again about them walking on that toe and we have that long fingernail out in front, there's a lot of forces that are going to be on the back of that leg as we do that because they can't sort of turn the foot properly. So a farrier's going to pick up the foot and they're going to look at the balance. They're going to see how the foot has grown over the last 4 to 6 weeks, what they need to address. Most farriers are actually going to try to leave the foot with nothing on it and do what we call a trim. So they're just going to trim the foot until they have it the way they want it, and then they're going to leave it alone. Now, for horses who are performing, when we think about the race horses, we think about any horse that's out doing a job, most of them are doing it on some sort of specialized footing. So, if you think about a football field, it's really not just a grass field. There's a lot more to it, especially if you talk to anyone who manages a football field. Same for the arenas where we put horses. That footing can be a bit abrasive to the foot. What we're asking them to do can chip their nails, basically. And so we need to put shoes on the bottom of their feet. Yeah. And not every horse needs shoes, but lots of them do so that they can live in the environment where we have them.
The horseshoe.
And then and I've seen horseshoes off of a horse and then on the bottom of the horse's hoof. How often are those changed out or cleaned?
Typically every 4 to 6 weeks.
Along with the mani
Wow.
pedi.
With
Yeah.
the-
Okay.
Okay. This is their whole spot treatment.
Okay. Yeah.
You should too. Yeah.
Depending on the horse, they may get new shoes every 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
The farrier may be able to reuse those shoes a few times.
Oh.
But it depends on the horse, the type of shoe. For
How
example,
they walk
yeah.
it. Yeah.
my horse has she has glue on shoes, so she sort of has gel.
Like a press-on nail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
funny. Acrylics.
Yeah, exactly. She's got acrylics. So when we take her shoes off, she gets done every 5 weeks. So when we take her shoes off, we can't put them back on.
Mm-hmm.
So she gets new shoes every 5 weeks.
Oh. What are some signs of hoof problems?
It is the number one cause of lameness in horses.
Oh.
So again, we think about, dogs and cats. We don't ask them generally to be performance animals.
Right.
They can sleep on the couch just fine
Yeah.
if they are a little bit off on a leg. But you think about like your dog having a little trouble jumping on the couch, that kind of thing. When we have that in a horse, they can't do their job. And foot issues are the number one cause of that.
Okay.
And it again goes back to that questionable design where they walk on one toe. So if we see a horse that is having a lameness problem, the first place we're going to look is the foot and see, do we have an issue with Mother Nature? Did that foot sort of come out, not put on right? In which case we're going to use shoes to help us with that. Or do we have an injury in that foot? What do we need to do? And the great thing about farriery is when we have a really great farrier we're working with, we can do a lot of modifications to that shoe that's on the bottom of there to change the forces on that foot and really help us with lameness injuries.
That sounds so intricate. And when you say lameness, what exactly do you mean by that? Like they can't get up and gallop away?
For us, oftentimes it can be very subtle. It can be that this horse needs to trot very evenly. Those horses are judged on how symmetrical they are.
Oh my
wow.
gosh.
Yeah. And so a lameness for them can just show up as their right front isn't going as high as their left front. It can be very, very subtle to an obvious limp.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm definitely off on this leg. I'm going to show you a limp. So
Okay.
there's
I
a
had
wide
no
variety
idea
of
that-
lameness. And one of the hard parts about lameness with horses is they can't tell us where it hurts.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
So if you think about you've got maybe you've got a twinge in your back, right? And you move just wrong and it hurts. Well, you can go to the doctor and say, it hurts when I do this, so they can say, don't do that.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And that's where some of the costs associated with horses, especially performance horses, can get very high very quickly as us trying to do the diagnostics required to figure out where does it hurt.
What about, I've heard, of course, the term a horse got spooked. What does that mean and why do horses get spooked? Where do you begin?
Because they're horses. This goes back to the fact that they're a prey species. And, it's one of those things that it can be difficult for us as humans. We want to anthropomorphize everything and make them tiny humans. I do it to my cats all day long, right? But they aren't. They are always looking for where is the mountain lion that's going to come after me? Because they're
a prey species.
They're a prey
Okay,
species.
yeah.
Yeah. And so even though we may not perceive it as a danger, a plastic bag for a horse is one of the most terrifying things on the planet. And it's because it moves weird. Like you'll have, and if you think about sort of in particular plastic bags, because they're notorious for being the scariest thing on the planet for a horse, they're often at the edge of their line of vision and they have a weird movement to them.
Do horses have really good hearing?
They have very good hearing, and their vision is also very different from us. So
Well, I mean, it's
where we often won't see what they're seeing. In particular, if you're in like a forested environment, they see much more of the horizon. So we take in like a whole image. Think about putting, sort of blinders on yourself, top and bottom. They see a very narrow strip, but they see it really well.
Oh, wow.
And it goes all the way around.
Yeah, it goes all the way around.
Right.
And they're looking for motion.
What are some other things they've gotten spooked on? Because you said it's never something that you would think, right? Like a plastic bag.
My neighbor has a dog that runs around their woods all the time, and so my horse will often see it long before I do.
Wow.
Because of the way they look through the woods. They can see sort of through that much better than we can. And so she'll see that motion far away. But they're notorious for, in the arena we'll have photographers. And that's common.
Oh.
And, until they get used to the fact that this is something that's in their environment, a lot of the young horses are like, whoa, what is that over there behind the thing? And it's a photographer.
And it's a photographer.
Because he's hiding
Wow.
behind a bush with a camera and click.
And then jumping out. I want to talk about skin conditions that are common. Oh, every time you do that, I'm like, oh man, are there so many to list? Like, what are some of the common skin conditions that horses may have?
The biggest thing they get is something we call rain rot, which sounds way worse than it is. But the way that their hair, and they much more have hair than fur. That's why they don't get fleas.
I didn't know that. Fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact, their hair follicles are too far apart for fleas to climb. But the way that works is we get, we'll get moisture coming up from the skin. We'll get, rain added to it, and it makes the perfect environment for bacteria to grow. So those are some of the big things.
Okay.
The other thing that'll happen for us is if they're out in a pasture environment, we'll have dew on the grass. Again, they'll get that wetness kind of on their lower leg, just above their hoof, and they almost get like an athlete's foot.
Oh.
And all of it is relatively easy to manage, but it takes, concerted effort. And basic grooming is a great way to manage it. You bring up the oils in the coat, think about all the things we do to have shiny hair and all of that. Same kind of deal. So regular grooming brings up those oils. We clean out the bacteria, we turn over the hair that they're shedding, all of that kind of stuff. If we need to go to additional things, we've got lots of options for medicated shampoos, topicals, that kind of stuff.
So I have to say this because it just popped in my head. I'm originally from Texas, right? And people used to ask me all the time if I traveled outside of Texas, did you ride a horse to school, right? And I'm like, what? No, I didn't. But something that we say in Texas often when you're like really, really tired at the end of the day is I feel like I've been rode hard and put up wet. I know you're not supposed to put horses away without having brushed them down, right?
Yep.
Tell me more about caring for horses, Dr. Lacher.
Well, again, that comes from, they're going to have sweat and grime and dirt on their skin. And it's important that you do something to clean that off. If they're super sweaty, we'll bathe them, or you can let it dry and do the good old-fashioned elbow grease and give them a good curry and a good brush. And that's the sort of rode hard, put away wet, is that you shouldn't do it. It's
No,
really
of course
bad
not.
for their skin. It's really bad for their health overall.
Mm-hmm.
So basic grooming on a daily basis, great. Honestly, mine don't get it every day. I have a busy career, as you guys heard. And so we'll do that, a couple times a week. All of mine get brushed down to make sure that I've kind of cleaned them up.
How long does all that take?
You can do them pretty quickly. Like
Okay, all
I
right.
can do one of mine in 5 to 7 minutes on a quickie.
Okay.
It
All right.
depends on how many selfies you take with the horse.
Do
during
Do
the
you take a
process.
lot of selfies with the horse?
Yes.
Oh, her phone is probably
I
like,
do.
what, 100,000 photos?
Yes, millions
I-
and millions.
What's a typical lifespan of a healthy horse?
Anymore, we get them into the 30s on a regular basis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and again, that's where sometimes leasing them is a better option than being committed to that horse. When I started in this, we won't talk about how many years ago. Usually, early 20s was really old, but with better food and better healthcare, all of the things that we offer them, I will say I routinely get them into their 30s.
That's amazing.
And I know you're really passionate about helping young veterinarians who are specializing in equestrian veterinary medicine. Why are you so passionate about it?
Because I love my job.
I can tell.
I have the best job. I get to work outside all day.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love mentoring. I think it's really great. Students keep you on your toes. You never get to BS them.
Yeah, and it sounds like you want more people to join the field as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Ease your burden a little.
Well, it's also a great profession, and I really enjoy teaching. It's something that I just, like I said, I enjoy it every day. And we are in a university town, so we get a lot of them.
Oh,
We get tons and tons of students, and then through our podcast, we've gotten more from farther away for sure. And the teaching component is just fantastic. I feel like it makes me learn something every day. They'll be like, why? And I said, I thought I knew why, but let me think about that. Let me give you a why, and if I can't, let me go look up the why.
I think also just as horse owners, the need to continue this profession is very personal to us. And being on the inside of it, we know that there are fewer and fewer and fewer equine veterinarians every year. And just in longevity, we'd like to retire at some point, but we still want somebody to be able to take care of our horses, right?
Yes.
But horses across the nation, there are more horses and more horse owners than ever before in history, and fewer veterinarians taking care of them. So we feel a responsibility to contribute everything we can to the longevity of this profession.
that's really cool.
That's really beautiful,
Yeah.
especially since you came into it later in life. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you woke up
married
one,
into
yeah, you married into it. Yeah, for
That means
sure.
I haven't had enough exposure to be tired of them yet.
Yeah.
That's good though.
Well, and going back to horse care and the things that people need to know about, I've heard about worms. And can you talk a little bit about that?
deworming a horse?
Yeah.
So parasite management is a big deal.
Sure.
It's sort of less of a big deal than most people think. In our modern environments that we have horses in, parasites are a relatively low-level problem for us. So that has evolved a ton in the years that I've been in the profession, for sure. We used to deworm them all the time, and we would do something called rotational deworming, which sounds great on paper, where we would use different products, different times of the year. So the rationale was we're exposing these parasites to different types of products so that they don't get used to it. The problem is it doesn't work.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
and there you go.
Yeah. And so now what we strongly recommend is we do what we call fecal egg counts. So we take a fecal sample with all that poop they provide
right.
us, and they are willing providers,
Yes.
and we check it for eggs of different parasites. And if they don't have a lot of them, then we don't deworm them.
Okay.
We typically do them once a year. And that's based on the parasite life cycle. That adjusts a little bit for region, but for most of North America, it's going to be fall to winter that we deworm them. And again, we only do that once a year. We typically use a product that's called ivermectin and praziquantel. So we typically do most horses once a year, and we're doing fecal egg counts to see if they need to be done more often. What that allows us to happen, it's a tricky concept, but we want to keep some worms in the intestinal system,
Really?
believe it or not. Sounds horrible, I know. But we want to keep a low level. And that allows us to have parasites that don't have resistance to dewormers in the environment. Also, most horses, while their immune system cannot remember a dang thing about a vaccine, does really well with parasites. They can remember those, and their immune system will naturally keep those levels low.
Well, that's all for now. This conversation was so good that we've had to put the rest in an additional episode.
Don't miss the exciting conclusion of our conversation in part 2 of this episode. Stay tuned.
Hey, stick around if you want to hear more about health and wellness in these episodes of Care Experts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.